Hello, my name's Al and today I'm going to show you how to replace your bar and stem. You'll often read that a wider bar and a shorter stem will aid your control of the bike. Here we show you how to fit them the right way. You don't need a lot of tools to do the swap. You will need some Allen keys, a torque wrench, some grease, and if the bar or stem manufacturer recommend it, some carbon assembly paste. Before you get fitting, you're going to want to make sure that you've got sufficient cable and hose length up front here. If you go for a really wide bar, then you're going to need a fair bit of slack. We've got a big bar here, it's an 800mm Pro bar and a 60mm stem. So it looks like we've got enough slack here, so all should be fine. Another thing to check is that you're going to have sufficient steerer length above the frame here. Depends on how tall your new stem is and how tall your old stem is. Here we've got loads of space, but you want to make sure that they're sufficient to run all the way through the stem. It's also worth noting you need to get the right size bar and stem. There's now 35mm bars on the market, so if you buy a 35mm bar, obviously you're going to need a 35mm stem. So a mistake that's fairly easy to make. These are 31/8, which is the standard, 31/8 on the stem, so we're all good here. And the stem here is an 1.1/8 size, so it will fit a standard steerer. But if you've got an oversized steerer, like a 1.5-inch steerer, it's not going to work. So check all that before you take everything apart. First up, we're going to strip everything from the old bars. So we've got lock-on grips on these bars, a single clamp, so it just needs undoing and removing. Undo the clamps for your brake and gear levers. And with those loosened, you can remove them from the bar, like so. With the bar stripped, we're going to take the whole lot off the fork. Undo the stem clamp. So there's two opposing bolts on this Kona stem. With those undone, we're going to remove the preload bolt and the top cap. Now these, once they're undone, will allow the fork to drop. So be careful and support it as you undo the bolt. With that undone fully, you can remove any spacers that are above the stem, plus the preload cap and the bolt. And the bar and stem will come straight off. Decide on where you would like your stem, i.e. the orientation of the spacers above or below it. We'll go for what we had before. Fit the spacers and screw the bolt in place. What you do need to check with whatever combination you use, that the steerer goes at least to halfway up that top bolt there. We've got no issues here at all. Loads of space, loads of spacers. For proper preload adjustment of the headset, you're going to need a good couple of mil between the top of the steerer and the top of the last spacer. Without that, the steerer will bottom out on the bottom of the preload cap and you won't be able to take all the slack out of your headset bearings. Just nip that up for now, and with that in place, the fork's in no danger of dropping out. As we've got quite a wide bar here, it makes sense to fit the controls before fitting the bars to the stem. Just gives you a bit more slack. Make sure the cables aren't twisted, and with those on there, we can fit the bar to the stem. Remove your bar clamp bolts. In this case, we've got 4 of them. And we're going to add a little bit of grease to the threads. Next, we're going to add some of the assembly paste to the bar. This was supplied with it. Nice even coverage all the way around. You don't need to put a lot on. Then we can fit the faceplate of the stem. This stem has a right way and a wrong way to fit the faceplate. This is due to it being a top lock design of stem. What that means is that this top clamp needs to be closed fully. Normally with a stem you would have nice even spacing between the clamp at the front and the body of the stem, nice even gaps top and bottom. But with this style of stem you tighten the top ones fully. Before we torque these two top bolts, we're just going to make sure that it's perfectly lined up with the graduations. Generally, the way that you want your bar set up, or the way that it was designed by the manufacturer, is with the logos facing straight forward. So we have our bar set up like that. You can always tweak it at a later date. Just check you've got your torque wrench set correctly and just nip those two top bolts up to the proper torque setting, which in this case is 5 Newton meters. Once those top ones are done, we can move on to the bottom. And there we go. That's the bar correctly installed into the stem. Next up, we're going to fit the grips. So slide these into position and tighten them just enough that they won't rotate. You can easily crush a lightweight bar by over tightening some lock-on grips, so go easy. There we go, nice and secure. It's a good idea to put a bit of Loctite on the small screws that attach these clamps. Helps prevent them coming loose. With the bike on the floor, we can adjust our headset. We're just nipping up that preload bolt to take any slack out of the headset bearings. It's not holding your stem in place, so literally nip it up to preload the bearings. Any more and your headset bearings won't last very long, or your steering will just feel awful. Now we can tighten our stem clamp. Now these do need to be tightened properly, but don't over tighten them because you'll damage them. So it does pay to use a torque wrench in this situation. These should be torqued to 5 Newton meters on this stem. Make sure they're even. So make sure the stem's aligned with the front wheel. Try and move the bars back and forth to feel for any play. It should be smooth with no play at all. Next up, we're tightening our controls into position. If you're not sure where to put them, a good rule of thumb is to have the brake lever angled in line with your forearm, and so you can get just one finger onto the brake lever blade. Just nip up the bolt enough so that the brakes and gear levers won't move in use, but so if you do have an off, it's more likely to be knocked out of the way than damage anything. Finally, make sure you've got bar plugs in place. So that's it, happy days. Got plenty of room with those cables and hoses. In fact, if anything, they're too long. They could do with a short one as it is, even with an 800mm bar. So yeah, all good, ready to go out and hit the trails. Thanks for watching, see you next time.